how many of you are familiar with this song? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? It looks like most of you know. I'm reading a fascinating book on Fred Rodgers, the maker, producer, writer, songwriter, actor of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Fascinating book. I encourage all of you to read it if you have the time. But this book inspired me to think about many things. One of them was kindness, what a lack there is of kindness nowadays, and how important it is. I also thought about spirituality. He became a pastor after he graduated from college about 10 years later. And I thought about education. And education is such a large topic. I narrowed it down to the first years of a child's education, which Fred Rodgers is an expert at. He thought out of the box, and he did so when he was a young man. Can you imagine being in high school and your vision, he could see it, is teaching young children? Very unusual. But he was a driven man from a very wealthy family. He was an only child until he was 11, and his mother and father adopted a little girl. He went on to love music, got his first college degree as a music major. But all the while, in his mind, he wanted to teach children, particularly little kids, little children. There was something about it that he wanted to give them in this lifetime of his. And he modeled his television program around his neighborhood in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He modeled a lot of the characters, the people that would walk on, from folks around his neighborhood, the mailman and the teacher and the puppets he used to play with as a child, and he developed that into his program as well. But all of this was to help little kids understand the big world that was out there. And he went to child development classes. He had a mentor that was a teacher. He was very spiritual, and like I said, he became a pastor. And when he became a pastor, they wanted him to teach Sunday school. And he said, no, that's not my calling. Of course, they were upset at him, but he wanted to bring that God-like quality in teaching children, because he felt that that was very important, because he was raised in a home that was very spiritual. And it just exudes from his television program. His kindness, his gentleness, his ability to talk one-on-one with children at their level to help them understand this big bad world out there. But then I got to looking at our educational system. I have a grandson that just turned 8, and when he was going through preschool and first grade, we had a lot of interaction in those grades. And I want to tell you, it wasn't a Mr. Rogers neighborhood, especially the first grade. That was quite a transition for all of us. But in the preschool, my husband and I were able to pick his preschool, and it was at a park. And there was women that taught the children, and they were very kind and gentle and sweet. But the lessons he had to learn were very hard. Sharing, no pushing, no shoving, no crying. All of those things that are adapting him to our society, right? But nobody ever got down on their knee to talk to him one-on-one. And that's so important to little ones, to be at their level, instead of looming over them and talking down to them. Nobody ever did that. And first grade was even worse. And so I thought, why can't we be like Mr. Rogers, Fred Rodgers, and develop classes from preschool to perhaps third grade? in a similar tone, in a similar meaning, in a similar feeling, to help these little ones get a good foundation for what's else to come in other classes, in other grades. Why not? We don't have funding anyway, and this could be voluntary. But it took him years to develop his programming, and we can certainly take segments from his programming and transfer that into our educational system pretty easily. He had 9 steps. I'll read them to you. It's a little bit lengthy, so hang in there with me. But this is his way of thinking, and these were his 9 steps that he felt were important, no matter when or what he was filming. The first one was, state the idea you wish to express as clearly as possible and in terms preschoolers can understand, such as, it is dangerous to play in the street. Number 2, rephrase it in a positive manner, as in, it is good to play where it is safe. 3 is rephrase the idea bearing in mind that preschoolers cannot yet make subtle distinctions and need to be redirected to authorities they trust, as in, ask your parents where it is safe to play. Number 4, rephrase your idea to eliminate all elements that could be considered prescriptive, directive, or instructive. For example, getting rid of the word ask and state, your parents will tell you where it is safe to play. Number 5, rephrase the element that suggests certainty. That'll be will. So say it like, your parents can tell you where it is safe to play. Rephrase that idea to eliminate any element that may not apply to all children. Not all children know their parents. So you would say it as, your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it is safe to play. Then you want to add a simple motivational idea that gives preschoolers a reason to follow your advice, perhaps. Your favorite grown-up can tell you where it is safe to play. It is good to listen to him. Rephrase your new statement, repeating the first step. Good represents a value judgment, so say it as, your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it is safe to play. It is important to try to listen to them. And lastly, number 9, rephrase that idea a final time, relating it to some phase of development a preschooler can understand. Such as, your favorite grown-ups can tell you where it is safe to play. It is important to try to listen to them, and listening is a very important part of growing up. So you can see the steps that he always took when he always was thinking about talking to children on his program. And you can see what he eliminated, what he finally added, and so the final statement is something that all children will listen to and understand. And he had 3 ways for ultimate success for any teacher. And he would say the first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. And the third way is to be kind. And it was also heard that he said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. So there's much, much more that I can get into here. But David wants to get into his table topics. But read the book and understand where he was coming from as a teacher of small children. And I sure wish we could do that in our educational system, because it would benefit not only the children but the parents as well, to give them a good foundation. I'm going to leave you with a few quotes here from people concerning education I found quite profound. Don't worry that your children never listen to you. Worry that they're watching you. If you don't feel safe as a child, you can't learn. Guess who said that? Lady Gaga. The more certain kids are that someone's got their back, the more confident and autonomous they will be. It's easier to build strong children than it is to repair a broken man. Think about that one. That's pretty profound. Children are apt to live up to what you believe of them. So if you hear a parent telling their child, that's really stupid, I've never heard that before, they start feeling that they are stupid. So we really have to watch our language when we're talking to our children. And the last one, Education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving our community and world better than you found it. And that's so true, and I think that we've lost that feeling in our educational system. But Fred Rodgers was a unique individual. I don't think there'll ever be another person like him to come around. They have a documentary out on him right now. Go see it, it's very interesting. But he was very kind, he was very spiritual, and he was very giving. And one little part of his life I want to share with you also is he was invited to go to Oprah's show before Oprah became really, really, really popular. This is when she was first starting out. And he didn't give a lot of interviews, but he agreed to give an interview on her stage, and he told her, please, I will come and talk to you, but no children. I want no children around, please. And she said, okay. But her staff thought, oh, we've got to have kids out there. Kids love him. They want to see him. They're their hero, right? Well, when the curtains opened, there was a whole bunch of children out in the audience with their parents, you know, screaming and yelling and clapping and all that kind of stuff. And he looked at Oprah. He looked at the audience. And he walked down to the audience and got on his knees and started talking to those children. Because in his world, nothing mattered more than a child. And he knew those children wanted to talk to him. And he wanted to talk to those children as well. So Oprah became a second fiddle to those kids. He told her. She wouldn't listen. But he was glad of it because he loved his children.
Thank you.
I need a little help today. Would you keep one and pass them down? Keep one. Yeah. One of the most difficult parts of evaluating a speech is, as I was telling our guest, how do you ask somebody to improve? Sometimes you're paying so much attention to the speech that you're just absorbing the speech and there's no gap. There's nothing that seems to be lacking. Oh, sin, when you get to the red thing, wave it, because I don't see it if you hold it still, okay? What does grace give us? It's an accumulation that she gives us. She does something that I'm pretty sure nobody else does here, and that she gives us a speech on a regular basis. I don't know how many speeches you give a year, but that's something that we can count on. She's faithful to that, and it always gives us a standard by which we can judge our own speeches. We can also judge our own activity as Toastmasters in the group. And so I wanted to thank you for that. I know that at times when I've had an evaluation, I'm so excited after having relieved myself of a speech that I don't always hear the evaluation, but when people have written things down, it's more important than the oral evaluation that's been given. So I'm hoping that you can offer something to Grace that I don't touch on. The speech mission asks to define the scope of the speech. And it also asks you to ask the speaker to narrow the topic. And I missed those. The concept of the speech, I thought at the beginning was going to be kindness. But it turned out as the speech evolved, not from the beginning, but as it evolved, that the concept was teaching children. And almost secondarily, the man who had devoted his life to doing that. And I want to ask you, what do you get out of Grace's speeches? That's practical. I always get a lot out of her speeches, like I tutor kids. And the thing that she mentioned at the very end was really interesting. You can't learn unless you're in a safe environment. And that goes for Toastmasters, right? We can't speak well, or we can't be encouraged to speak unless the environment is safe. And I've been working with a high school kid that I've had trouble getting through to, and now I have a guideline to go on. What is it about learning that makes him feel unsafe? I'm going to explore that this afternoon when I meet with him to see if I can begin to ferret out okay, am I threatening you, or is the class threatening you? What's going on that's making it impossible for you to learn here? So that, to me, is one of the really important takeaways from Toastmasters, is oftentimes on a theoretical level of talking about something, you get something really practical. And Grace always gives us that. What I found really most interesting is this programming thing that Mr. Rodgers goes through, and trying to come up with the best way to speak to children. And I found that almost impossible to go through, because, I mean, we give things a second thought, as the expression goes, but do we go through the 9 steps that he asks us to do? No, we don't get halfway near there. But each of those considerations that he had were really important. It was difficult to get that across. One of the important concepts that came through was the ending. To me, your ending brought it all together, because I was having trouble kind of looping it together myself. What he did on the Oprah show. I mean, you know, Oprah was like Mecca. She was the goddess. Everybody paid homage to her who was a guest of hers. But he didn't. And that kind of was about the principle of the man, which was one-on-one. Even when I was watching the show on TV, I learned a lot about gender. You know, the song, "Some people are happy on the outside, some are happy on the inside." There I'm sitting there with my 2 daughters and Val in the background. And, okay, this is what gender is. Good. It was always one-to-one. There he was on the TV screen, and me and the girls and Val were watching it on the other side, and it was all one-to-one. And I thought that was a really great way to end it, not just about him, but about Grace. Because when you're speaking, it's always one-to-one, to each of us as well. And thank you for your reliability, and thank you for your practice of being a Toastmistress.